The sheriff stood in my backyard with one hand on his belt, staring at the faded wooden fence that had been there longer than he'd been alive. Bright orange spray paint slashed across my grass in a crooked line, and just behind it stood Karen from the HOA, arms folded, pastel blazer, lips pressed so tight they almost disappeared. "Sir," the sheriff said, "she's claiming this fence is on her association's property." Karen jabbed a manicured finger toward my fence. "This is our land. The HOA survey says so. That fence needs to move today or we'll start fining you $1,000 a day." I held up the yellowed map I'd brought out of my fireproof box. "This map was recorded in 1943, I said, my voice shaking, but not from fear. "My property lines have been the same since before your HOA even existed." With neighbors filming from their decks and the sheriff's eyebrows slowly lifting as he compared my old map to Karen's shiny new printout, I realized this wasn't just about a fence. It was about who actually owned this land and who had spent years bullying everyone else into believing they didn't. Before I tell you how this ended, with lawyers, a packed courtroom, an emergency survey, and Karen getting called out in front of the whole subdivision, let me ask you something. What would you do if someone tried to erase your property line like it was just a pencil mark? If you like seeing entitled people finally get held accountable, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below. Backhand index pointing right. Do you think the old historic documents should matter more than the new HOA survey? I go through your comments, and I really want to know whose side you're on after hearing everything. All right, let me take you back to where this started. The first time I heard Karen say the phrase non-compliant fence, I honestly thought she was joking. My name is Daniel, and I live in a little brick house my grandparents bought right after World War II. Back then, this wasn't a subdivision. It was just a dirt road and a handful of farm-style houses. My grandfather put up the fence himself, thick cedar posts, heavy boards, the whole thing built to survive storms and time. He sank the corner posts into concrete right on the original survey markers. Those posts had been there for over 70 years without a single problem. Then the developers came. They bought the open land behind our lots, chopped it into parcels, and built a shiny new HOA-controlled subdivision right up to the back of our older properties. I kept to myself, watched all the pastel houses go up, and figured as long as I paid my taxes and minded my own business, nobody could touch my fence. That's when Karen moved in. If you've ever dealt with an HOA Karen, you already know the type. She introduced herself not with, "Hi, I'm your new neighbor," but with, "I'm the acting president of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association." She said it like a job title from a movie, like she expected me to be impressed. She looked at my older brick house like it was something she needed to fix. One afternoon, I was trimming the shrubs by the fence when I heard the sharp click of heels on concrete behind me. "Excuse me," a voice said, like I'd done something wrong just by existing. I turned around. Karen stood there with a clipboard, sunglasses, and a thin, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Daniel, is it?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You're Karen, right, from the new development?" "Willow Ridge," she corrected instantly. "We've been reviewing property boundaries and easements for the association, and your fence came up as questionable." I actually laughed. "Questionable? This fence has been here longer than any of your houses." Her smile tightened just a little. "Be that as it may, our survey and our plat map show this fence sitting 3 feet inside the Willow Ridge boundary. Technically, it's encroaching on common HOA land." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Your survey is wrong," she raised a brow. "Are you a surveyor?" "No," I said, feeling my jaw clench. "But my grandfather kept every original document from when he bought this place. The fence sits exactly where the original markers were set. The county recorded that." Karen tapped her clipboard with her pen. "Well, the association's documents have been recorded too. We're going to need you to move the fence to the correct line." Something hot twisted in my chest. The fence, the yard, the old oak tree on the corner, this wasn't just lumber and dirt. This was my grandparents' life, their history, my childhood. "I'm not touching that fence because a brand new HOA decided it doesn't like where my property starts," I said. For a second, her eyes flashed with something almost gleeful, like she loved that I was pushing back, like this was a game she'd already decided she was going to win. "I'll send you the official notice," she said lightly. "You'll have 30 days to comply before fines begin." She turned on her heel and walked away like it was already settled. The letter showed up 3 days later. "Notice of an when-compliant structure," the top of the page screamed in bold letters. The HOA claimed my fence encroached on their greenbelt area by exactly 3 feet, demanded I move it at my own expense, and threatened fines of up to $1,000 per day for ongoing violation. I stared at the paper for a long time. My hands actually shook, not because I believed her, but because I knew how expensive and exhausting fighting something like this could be. HOAs count on that. They count on people folding. Then I pulled out the metal box my grandfather had always told me to protect. It was scratched, dented, and heavy. Inside were brittle envelopes, old photos, and neatly folded documents. Among them was the original deed, a black and white survey, and a hand-drawn sketch my grandfather had done of the lot, fence included. The corner markers on the paper lined up with the big flat stones still half buried at each boundary. Those stones were older than Karen's entire subdivision. I took the documents down to the county record's office. The clerk, a tired-looking woman with a kind smile, pulled up the digital plat map on her screen. "You're right," she said, tracing the lines with her finger. "Your lot was recorded decades before the Willow Ridge subdivision. Your boundary hasn't changed." "Then how can they say my fence is on their land?" I asked. She sighed. "Sometimes, when new subdivisions are surveyed, they treat the older lots as a block and redraw lines for convenience. But legally, your original recorded description is what matters for your property, unless you sign something to change it." "I didn't sign anything," I said. "Then your property lines are what they've always been." I walked out of that office with certified copies of everything, feeling confident for the first time since Karen showed up with her clipboard. I figured once I showed her the documents, she'd back off. I seriously underestimated how far a determined HOA Karen will go when she decides something is non-compliant. Karen draws her own property line and calls the HOA board to enforce it. If you've ever dealt with someone who decides they're right and then tries to make reality bend to their will, then you already know exactly what dealing with Karen felt like. The day after I went to the county office, I walked into my backyard with the folder of official, certified documents in my hand, proud, confident, ready to end this stupidity. My plan was simple: show Karen the truth, show her the historical maps, and settle this like adults. But Karen had a different plan, because when I rounded the corner of my house, I froze. My jaw literally dropped. Karen was in my backyard, not near my yard, not at the fence line. Inside my property, standing next to one of the old cedar fence posts like she owned the place. "Karen," I yelled, "what are you doing on my property?" She snapped her head toward me, absolutely unfazed. "I'm marking the association's easement." "Easement? You don't have an easement on my property. You can't just walk back here." "Oh, I can," she said, smiling like she was the CEO of my backyard. "HOA regulations grant us administrative access." "No, your HOA regulations don't apply to me," I said slowly. "I'm not part of your subdivision." She waved her hand like she was brushing away a fly. "That's not how easements work." Yes, Karen was now lecturing me on easements while trespassing, holding a roll of neon orange tape in her hands. She wrapped the tape around my fence post and tugged it tight. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Visually marking the encroachment," she said. "This fence clearly sits on Willow Ridge common property." "Look," she pointed to a laminated copy of the Willow Ridge plat map she'd taped to a clipboard. "Right here, see? The line curves inward and your fence is 3 feet past it." "Your survey is wrong," I snapped, "and I have the historical documents that prove it." I handed her the 1943 survey, the thick old paper unfolded across her clipboard like a living piece of history. Karen stared at it for 4 whole seconds. Then, without hesitation, she said, "This isn't valid." My jaw clenched. "It's counter-recorded and certified. It is absolutely valid." "We'll let the board decide," she said, rolling her eyes. "No, the board doesn't decide counter-recorded property lines." She took a step toward me, too close for comfort. "Daniel, I'm telling you this for your own good. If you fight the HOA, you will not win." I laughed, actually laughed. "I'm not under your HOA. You have no authority over me." Karen smiled, a cold, chilling, I know something you don't kind of smile. "Sure about that?" she said quietly. I didn't like the way she said it. It was the kind of tone you only hear when someone is about to unleash chaos. She walked off, leaving the orange tape dangling like a threat. That night, a letter appeared under my door, not mailed, not delivered by hand politely, just shoved under the door like a ransom note. "Second notice of fence encroachment, immediate action required." 5 pages long. 5 pages of threats, fines, black and white photos of my own fence, and a demand that I tear it down within 14 days. I took the letter to the county sheriff's office. The deputy behind the counter looked exhausted. You could tell he dealt with HOA drama 1,000 times before. "I'm not part of their HOA," I explained. "They have zero authority. They're trespassing and threatening me." He skimmed the letter, his eyebrows slowly lifted. "They're trying to fine you even though you're not a member." "Exactly." He exhaled sharply through his nose. "All right, I'll send someone out to tell them to leave you alone." I felt relieved, but only for a moment, because the next day, instead of backing off, Karen escalated. I woke up to construction spray paint all over my lawn, bright orange just like the tape she'd used before. The paint cut across my grass in a crooked line, her imaginary property boundary stretching from the oak tree to the back corner, and beside it, a wooden stake with a sign hammered into my yard. HOA property, do not cross. My blood pressure spiked. Neighbors gathered behind the HOA fence line, whispering, filming, shaking their heads. Some were laughing, others looked horrified. One older man muttered, "That woman's gone too far this time." I stormed outside just as Karen strutted across the yard with 2 HOA board members trailing behind her. "Good morning," she chirped. "You trespassed again," I shouted. "Get off my land." "This is Willow Ridge Common Land," she said sweetly. Before I could respond, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Deputy Harris stepped out, tall, calm, authoritative. He nodded at me, then turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I talked to Mr. Carter yesterday," he said. "You can't enforce HOA rules on someone who isn't part of your association, and you definitely can't trespass on his property." Karen didn't blink. "Deputy, with all due respect, he is part of our association." I nearly choked. "What?" "I never signed anything." She held up a document, the Willow Ridge boundary map printed from the developer's website. "This map shows his fence line intrudes into Willow Ridge, therefore his property is partially within HOA jurisdiction." Deputy Harris stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at me, then at the fence, then at the orange spray paint. "You're basing this on your own spray paint?" "It's just a visual aid," she snapped. "Our survey proves county records override HOA surveys," the deputy cut in firmly. Karen's face reddened so fast I thought she might explode. "This isn't over," she hissed. "The board will take legal action." She stormed off, her heels clicking like gunshots against the concrete. And as ridiculous as she sounded, something in my gut twisted. Because the way she said legal action didn't sound like an empty threat. It sounded like a promise. Karen goes nuclear, HOA lawyers, harassment, and a surprise visit from code enforcement. You'd think after getting shut down by the sheriff, Karen would have backed off. You'd think she'd retreat, regroup, maybe spend some time thinking about where she went wrong. Nope. Karen woke up the next morning and chose violence. Because when I opened my mailbox, I didn't find one letter. I found 7, all from the Willow Ridge HOA, all stamped urgent. All threatening some new consequence if I didn't move the fence immediately. One letter claimed I was in violation of HOA landscaping standards. Another claimed I was knowingly obstructing HOA green space. Another claimed I owed them a $1,500 encroachment investigation fee. A fee for them trespassing on my land. But the worst was letter number 7, a cease and desist from the HOA attorney, a real law firm, a real threat. A real attempt to intimidate me into submission. My blood went cold. I reread the page 3 times. It claimed the HOA had full authority over the contested strip of land, and if I didn't remove my fence within 10 days, they would seek judicial remedies including forced removal by court order. They were actually planning to take me to court over a fence that wasn't even theirs. I walked inside shaking and called my buddy Jake, who worked in real estate. "Dude," he said as soon as I explained, "this is insane. They have no jurisdiction." "But they have a lawyer," I said. He snorted. "Every HOA has a lawyer, doesn't mean they're right. But they're threatening court." "Then you need your own legal ammo," he said. "File for a quiet title hearing." "A what?" "A quiet title. It's used to officially determine property ownership in disputes. If you win, and you will because you have historical records, you get a court order establishing the true property line. After that, the HOA can't touch you." I swallowed hard. "How much will that cost? Cheaper than letting them win?" That same afternoon, things got even worse. A white truck rolled down my street. Green seal on the door, clipboard, utility vest, county code enforcement. My stomach dropped. The officer stepped out, adjusted his hat, and approached me politely. "Sir, we received an anonymous complaint regarding a non-permitted structure on your property." Anonymous, sure, totally not Karen. "What structure?" I asked. "The fence," he said. I almost laughed, but it came out as a frustrated wheeze. "That fence has been here since the 1940s. "I understand," he said sympathetically, "but when a complaint is filed, we have to inspect." He walked over, snapped photos, examined the posts, measured distances. Then he said quietly, "Off the record, this complaint is clearly spiteful." I shook my head. "Karen is weaponizing every agency she can." "She doesn't have jurisdiction over you," he confirmed, "but she does have the ability to cause headaches." Then he gave me good news. "Sir, based on the age and condition of this fence, it's grandfathered in under legacy property use. You're fully within code." "Can you put that in writing?" I asked. He smiled. "Already did." He handed me a signed inspection clearance. A victory, a small one, but I needed it. That evening, a neighbor named Linda knocked on my door. She lived on the HOA side, but she looked nervous, glancing around like she expected Karen to jump out of the bushes. "I need to warn you," she whispered. The HOA board is meeting right now. Karen pushed them into a full vote to authorize legal action against you. My stomach tightened. Over a fence? She says you're threatening the integrity of Willow Ridge property. She's convinced half the board you're some kind of stubborn troublemaker. I rubbed my eyes. I've lived here for decades. I've never caused anyone trouble. I know, she said softly. A lot of us know, but Karen, she has influence. She scares people. The board approves almost anything she demands. Even if it's illegal, she hesitated. They trust her more than they should, I sighed deeply. Thanks for telling me, Linda, really. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. She's not doing this because your fence is wrong. She's doing this because she needs to win. Linda was right. Because an hour later, 3 HOA board members knocked on my door, clipboard, forms, and a nasty attitude. We're here to deliver official notice, the tallest one said, handing me a thick envelope. The HOA has voted unanimously to proceed with legal action. I tore open the packet, a full legal petition, filed with the county courthouse. They were taking me to court, over 3 feet of imaginary land. I looked at the board members. Do any of you understand that I'm not part of your HOA? Silence. One of them muttered. Karen said. I cut him off. Karen is wrong. They didn't respond. They just walked away, heads down, ashamed or too scared of Karen to admit she was dragging them into legal suicide. And that's when I made my decision. No more reacting, no more waiting, no more hoping Karen would magically gain common sense. Tomorrow morning, I was going to file my own petition, a real one. A quiet title action backed by historical records, expert testimony, and the full power of county law. If Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one. The quiet title war begins, Karen brings fake evidence, and the sheriff steps in again. By sunrise the next morning, I was sitting in my truck in the courthouse parking lot with a giant folder of documents on the seat beside me. I must have checked the folder a dozen times. The historical survey, the certified copies, the old deed, the photographs of the original markers, and the new inspection clearance from code enforcement. This was it. This wasn't just about a fence anymore. This was about defending my family's land, my peace, and honestly, my dignity. I walked into the courthouse and filed the quiet title petition, my hands shaking slightly as I handed the clerk the stack of documents. Stamped the top page and looked up. You're doing the right thing, she said. These cases can get messy, but you have strong evidence. Messy was an understatement, because by the time I stepped back outside into the fresh morning air, Karen was already waiting for me. She stood by the steps in her pastel blazer, holding a thick binder and wearing sunglasses like she was a celebrity caught by paparazzi. Daniel, she said, voice dripping with false sweetness. I hear you filed something against the HOA. I stopped walking. I filed a quiet title to establish the real property lines. She lifted her chin. You're wasting your time. We have experts. We have professional surveyors. You have a map that contradicts 80-year-old county records, I cut in. Her smile twitched. Daniel, you need to accept reality, she said. This land is part of Willow Ridge now. The developer said so, the board said so, the HOA attorney said so, and frankly, she leaned closer, lowering her voice. Frankly, nobody likes a difficult neighbor. There it was, the real motive, not justice, not boundaries, control, power. You trespassed on my property, I said quietly. You vandalized my lawn, you filed fake complaints and tried to bully me with your HOA lawyer. I'm not a difficult neighbor. I'm a man defending the property my grandparents built. Her jaw clenched. You will lose, she whispered. No, I said, stepping past her. You will. But Karen wasn't finished. That afternoon, a silver Honda rolled up to my driveway. A young guy with a reflective vest stepped out, carrying a measuring wheel and a tablet. Afternoon, sir, he said. I'm with Ridgeline Surveying. I was hired by the Willow Ridge HOA to perform an updated survey. My stomach sank. Here we go again. You're surveying my property, I asked. He hesitated. They told me this was HOA-managed land. It's not, he swallowed. Oh, well, I already accepted the job. Then you need to stay on their side of the fence. He nodded nervously. Yes, sir. He walked along the HOA side, measuring and tapping notes into his tablet. Then, to my utter disbelief, Karen strutted out of her backyard and started directing him. No, no, she said, waving her clipboard dramatically. The corner marker is over here. See, I painted it. She pointed to the crooked spray-painted line she'd made across my lawn. The surveyor scratched his head. Ma'am, that's not a marker. It represents the marker, she insisted. Just measure from that. He looked mortified. Ma'am, we can't use paint lines. We use official markers, Karen huffed. Well, the original marker was removed, obviously. She said, removed like she thought I dug it up in the middle of the night. I held up my phone. I have photo proof of the original marker in place as of last week. The surveyor looked at the picture, my grandfather's stone marker nearly embedded in the earth, and his eyebrows shot up. That's old, he said. Really old, that's authentic. Karen surged forward. He faked that. I stared at her. You think I photoshopped a 70-year-old rock? She shrugged. People do crazy things when they know they're wrong. The surveyor turned pale. Ma'am, I can't conduct a fraudulent survey. If there's a court case pending, this must be done by a neutral county surveyor. Corinne's face turned a dangerous shade of red. Unbelievable. Do you know who I? Before she could finish her infamous sentence, a sheriff's cruiser rolled up again. Deputy Harris stepped out, hands on his belt. What's going on here? Corinne immediately jumped into her performance. Deputy, perfect timing. This man is preventing an authorized HOA survey. Deputy Harris looked at the young surveyor. Did he threaten you? No, sir, the guy blurted. He was completely respectful, Issue is that the HOA instructed me to use a paint line as a boundary. The deputy blinked. A paint line? Yes, sir. Ma'am, he said, turning to Corinne, spray paint is not a legal boundary. It represents— No, he said firmly. Stop, I'm telling you right now, until the quiet title hearing, no one touches anything. No one moves a fence, no surveys, no harassment. Corinne's mouth fell open. Harassment? I'm trying to protect the community. You're trespassing and making false claims, the deputy said. You need to stop. She pointed at me dramatically. This is discrimination. Against what? I asked. Homeowners associations, she yelled. We deserve respect. Even Deputy Harris had to look away to hide a smirk. Ma'am, he said tiredly, go home. Corinne stomped away so aggressively her heels nearly snapped. The surveyor apologized 3 times, packed up, and left. Deputy Harris turned to me. She's not gonna stop, he said quietly. Prepare yourself, court's gonna be messy. I nodded. I figured. But nothing could prepare me for what happened next, because Corinne wasn't done fighting, she was just getting started. Court day chaos, Corinne gets exposed, tries to lie under oath, and the judge loses patience. The courthouse was packed. Not just with lawyers, not just with officials, but with neighbors. People from Willow Ridge, people from my old street, even folks I barely knew filled the benches like they were watching a drama unfold on live television. And honestly, they were. Corinne sat at the front with 2 HOA board members flanking her like bodyguards. She wore a pastel blazer so bright it practically glowed, and she held her clipboard like a holy relic. Her attorney, a stiff-looking man with square glasses, flipped through papers beside her. I sat on the other side with my attorney, a calm, older woman named Ms. Garner who had the quiet confidence of someone who'd seen every type of property dispute imaginable. Don't worry, she whispered. Judges hate HOAs. I laughed nervously. Is that true? Oh yes, she said, with passion. The bailiff called the case. Willow Ridge Homeowners Association versus Daniel Carter Property Line Dispute. The judge entered. Judge Hollies was in his 60s, tall, silver-haired, with an expression that said he had zero tolerance for nonsense. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the first page of the case file. His eyebrows lifted. You're suing a man for a fence built 80 years ago, he asked the HOA lawyer. The lawyer cleared his throat. Your Honor, the fence lies on HOA-maintained greenbelt, according to a new map, the judge said, flipping pages. But this man has historical deeds, county-recorded surveys, and original markers. Well, Your Honor, sit, the judge said sharply. The lawyer sat. Then the judge looked at Corinne. And who are you? Corinne straightened. I'm the president of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. I didn't ask for your title, the judge said. I asked who you are in this case. Corinne blinked. I'm here to represent the HOA. Are you an attorney? No. Then sit down and be quiet unless spoken to. The courtroom exploded with suppressed laughter. Corinne turned beet red. Ms. Garner stood and began presenting our evidence. The 1943 survey, the original deed photographs of the old stone markers, certified county copies, the code enforcement clearance, and a notarized affidavit from the neighbor who had seen Corinne trespassing. The evidence stacked up like a mountain. Then came Corinne's turn. Her attorney stood and puffed himself up dramatically. Your Honor, the HOA survey clearly shows a 3-foot encroachment. Judge Hollies looked unimpressed. Show me. The lawyer projected the HOA's plat map onto the screen, slick, modern, colorful. Then Ms. Garner projected the original 1943 map beside it, yellowed, fragile, stamped, signed, recorded, sealed. The judge stared back and forth. Then he said something that made Corinne's face fall. The old map overrides the new one. Her lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, the HOA's surveyors are licensed professionals. So are county surveyors, the judge replied, and county documents carry greater legal weight. Corinne shot to her feet. Your Honor, the fence is ruining the symmetry of Willow Ridge. Sit, the judge said without looking at her. She sat so hard her clipboard clattered to the floor. Then came the moment that changed everything. Corinne's lawyer called Corinne to testify. She strutted up like a queen ready to conquer the courtroom. Mrs. Fairchild, the lawyer asked, did the defendant's fence intrude into HOA property? Yes, she said confidently. And how do you know? I measured it myself. The courtroom went silent. Ms. Garner slowly stood. You measured it yourself? Yes, Karen said proudly. I used paint to mark the correct line. Judge Hollies lifted his head sharply. Paint. Yes, Karen said. A bright orange boundary line, very accurate. The judge placed his hands on the bench and leaned forward. Mrs. Fairchild's spray paint is not a measurement tool. Gasps, laughter, someone whispered, oh my God. It was approximate, Karen snapped. So your entire claim rests on an approximate paint line? The judge asked. Karen froze, her lips moved, no sound came out. Ms. Garner stepped forward. Your Honor, the HOA attempted to hire a private surveyor who refused to use her paint line because it would constitute fraudulent surveying. We have his statement. The surveyor stood in the back and raised his hand. That's correct, Your Honor. The judge closed the file slowly, deliberately, like he was sealing a coffin. Mrs. Fairchild, he said, you have wasted this court's time with false claims, improper surveying, and what appears to be personal harassment. Karen swallowed hard. The judge turned to the HOA lawyer. Case dismissed. The room exploded. People whispered, gasped, even clapped. Karen stood there frozen like she'd been unplugged, but the judge wasn't done. He pointed at Karen. And Mrs. Fairchild, if you approach this man's property again without permission, I will personally see to it you are charged with harassment and trespass. Do I make myself clear? She nodded stiffly. Yes, Your Honor. And that was the day her entire HOA empire started to crumble. Karen's revenge plan begins, HOA meltdown, backdoor schemes, and a suspicious new threat. Court should have been the end of it. A normal person would have walked away, swallowed their pride, and accepted the ruling. But Karen wasn't normal. Karen wasn't done. Karen was humiliated, and humiliation is gasoline on a Karen's ego. The very next morning, I stepped outside to grab the mail, finally expecting some peace when I noticed something taped to the side of my fence. A bright red sign with block letters. Community condemnation notice, fence unsafe. I stared at it, stunned. Condemnation? By who? The county seal was missing. The signature line was blank. The formatting looked like it was made in Microsoft Word by someone who barely knew what bold text was. A fake notice. Karen had upgraded from harassment to forging official-looking documents. I ripped the paper off and marched to my backyard, half expecting to find more signs. Instead, I found something much worse. Karen was standing behind the fence, clipboard in hand, whispering aggressively to a cluster of HOA board members. All of them stared at me like I was a criminal. I took a deep breath. Whatever you're doing, stop. Karen turned slowly, smiling like she'd rehearsed the expression in the mirror. Oh, Daniel, just documenting safety issues for the neighborhood. What safety issues? She pointed at the fence. That. What about it? It's old and leaning and hazardous and visually offensive to community aesthetics. It's been standing for 80 years, I said. It's sturdy. Karen's eyes narrowed. Not according to our report. Your report from who? The Paint Line Inspection Bureau. A couple neighbors snorted with laughter, quickly silenced when Karen shot them a death glare. One of the HOA board members finally spoke. We were told the county condemned it. No, I said sharply. Karen printed a fake notice. The board member blinked. You forged an official notice, Karen bristled. It's a draft, Stephen, a preliminary draft. For what? I demanded. She crossed her arms. To warn the community that your fence is a liability. You don't have authority over me. Karen leaned in. You think that courtroom embarrassment means you win? You embarrassed the HOA. You embarrassed me. Actions have consequences. And there it was, the real motive, revenge. But she wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and snapped pictures of the fence, my yard, even me, like she was building a case from thin air. I walked back inside, heart pounding. That afternoon, I filed a police report for harassment. Enough was enough, but things escalated fast. The next day, a group of teenagers rang my doorbell. They looked nervous. Sir, we just wanted to tell you there's been a rumor going around. What rumor? That your fence is dangerous and that your house might have structural issues. I blinked. From who? They exchanged looks. The HOA President, I sighed. Of course. And the tallest teen added, she told people that your grandfather didn't follow the law when he built this place. My blood boiled. Karen was now trashing my grandfather's name. That crossed a line I didn't even know I had. I thanked the kids and stepped back inside, anger simmering like a pot about to overflow. How far was she willing to go? What was the end game here? How much deeper could she drag herself? Turns out, very deep. 2 nights later, around 10:30 p.m., I heard rustling in the backyard. Soft footsteps, whispering, a metallic clink. I grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside. 3 silhouettes froze beside my fence, one holding a hammer, one with a clipboard, one taking pictures. I snapped on the flashlight beam. Hey, they scattered like cockroaches, except for the one in the middle, Karen. She shielded her eyes. Turn that light off. What are you doing in my yard at night? We're, performing a safety inspection, she said, voice cracking. At 10:30 at night. It's cooler in the evenings, she snapped. With a hammer. That's for testing wood integrity. Nice try, I said. I'm calling the sheriff. You wouldn't dare. I dialed. Her eyes widened. You can't. We're the HOA, the dispatcher picked up. Karen panicked. Wait, we can talk about this. No, I said. We can't. 15 minutes later, blue lights lit up the street. The sheriff stepped out unimpressed and exhausted. Again, he muttered. Deputy Harris, I said. They were trespassing with tools at night. Karen pointed dramatically at the fence. It's a safety hazard. It's his property, the deputy said. You have no jurisdiction. I'm allowed administrative access. At night, Deputy Harris barked. Karen shrank back. He sighed deeply. Mrs. Fairchild, I'm giving you a written warning. If you trespass again, even by an inch, I will charge you. She opened her mouth to argue. He held up a hand. One more word. And I'll charge you tonight. Karen closed her mouth. Deputy Harris handed me a copy of the report and whispered, You need cameras. She's escalating. He was right, because Karen wasn't done, not even close. She was about to cross the most unforgivable line yet. The HOA tries to destroy evidence, a hidden camera reveal, a community uprising, and Karen's biggest meltdown yet. After the nighttime trespassing incident, I installed security cameras, front yard, side yard, backyard, and one pointing directly at the fence line. The footage streamed straight to my phone 24/7. I thought the cameras would discourage Karen. I was wrong. Instead, they exposed everything, and I mean everything. 3 nights later at exactly 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, backyard camera 2. My heart jumped. I opened the live feed, and there she was, Karen in pajamas, sneakers, hair tied up, holding a flashlight in her mouth like a raccoon with a headlamp, but she wasn't alone. 2 HOA board members, Mark and Don, were beside her, dragging a plastic bin full of tools. I stared at my phone, half horrified, half impressed by the sheer insanity. Karen pointed at the fence like a general ordering an attack. Mark pulled out a pry bar. Don held a digital level and clipboard. Karen whispered something frantically. Then Mark jammed the pry bar under one of the old cedar posts and pushed with all his strength. The fence groaned. I froze. They weren't inspecting. They were trying to loosen the post. Sabotage, so they could later claim the fence was unstable and dangerous. I hit record on the live feed. My hands shook with rage and disbelief. Then Karen noticed the camera. Her eyes widened. She screamed, actually screamed. They're watching us. Mark dropped the pry bar. Don tripped over the tool bin. All 3 sprinted across the yard like they were fleeing a wild animal. I replayed the footage twice just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Nope. The HOA had just attempted to sabotage my fence on camera at 2 in the morning. I called the sheriff immediately. Deputy Harris arrived with another officer, watched the footage with his jaw clenched and sighed. I didn't want it to come to this, he said, but they just crossed into criminal. What happens now? I asked. Property damage, attempted fraud, trespassing, harassment. We'll take statements tonight and forward this to the DA. This isn't HOA drama anymore. It's illegal. I felt relief, not joy. This whole mess had gone too far for joy. But finally, someone besides me understood how dangerous Karen really was. By the next morning, the footage had leaked. I didn't leak it. I showed it to one neighbor. And within half a day, everyone in Willow Ridge had seen it. Group chats blew up. Facebook exploded. Neighbors knocked on my door saying, I knew she was bad, but this. That evening, a full-blown crowd gathered in front of Karen's house. People yelling, people recording, people demanding she resign. Karen stormed out with her clipboard like it was a shield. This is a misunderstanding, she screamed. The video wasn't edited, someone shouted. You trespassed, yelled another. You tried to destroy his fence, a neighbor added. You lied to the whole community, shouted Linda, the neighbor who had warned me earlier. Karen's face twisted into a full Karen meltdown, veins bulging, fists clenched, voice shaking with self-righteous rage. He is trying to destroy this community. She bellowed, pointing at me like I was a supervillain. No, Karen, Linda shouted back. You are. Then something unbelievable happened. A HOA board member, Mark, the guy with the pry bar, stepped forward, hands raised, his voice cracked. Karen, this has gone too far. We were following your orders, but you lied to us. You told us the county condemned the fence. You told us the judge gave you permission. You told us. Stop talking, Karen shrieked. But he didn't. He turned to the crowd. She dragged us into legal trouble. She forged documents. She made us trespass. Karen lunged toward him. People gasped. Deputy Harris grabbed her arm. Ma'am, don't. She spun toward me. This is your fault, she screamed. You did this. You ruined everything. I stared at her in disbelief. I defended my home. You humiliated me. You humiliated yourself. Her chest heaved. Her voice cracked. Her eyes were wild. That's when the deputy stepped forward. Mrs. Fairchild, he said firmly, you need to come with me. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Are you arresting her? Someone whispered. Detaining for questioning, he said. The DA will review the charges. Karen's knees buckled. Her clipboard fell to the ground. Her voice shrank to a whisper. No, no, not like this, but the deputy gently guided her toward the cruiser. As the door shut, Karen stared at me through the window, rage, fear, disbelief, everything mixing together. And the community watched the HOA president they once feared get driven away under flashing blue lights. All because she couldn't accept that my fence was never on her land. The DA steps in HOA board mutiny, a community vote, and Karen's final unraveling begins. Karen's arrest didn't magically make everything peaceful overnight. If anything, it threw gasoline onto a bonfire. By the next morning, Willow Ridge was buzzing. People weren't just whispering about the footage. They were arguing loudly on sidewalks, posting in neighborhood groups, and demanding answers from the HOA board. Some were furious at Karen. Some were furious at the board. Some were terrified of what might happen to the neighborhood now that their fearless leader had been exposed. But almost nobody defended her anymore, except Karen, who, as it turned out, had been released early that morning and was back home. And she was angrier than ever. Around noon, I stepped outside to find 2 sheriff's deputies posting a notice on her door, temporary restraining order. Karen couldn't come near my property for 60 days, but from across the street through her window, I could see her pacing like a caged tiger, phone in hand, calling everyone she could drag into her tornado. The HOA board arrived less than an hour later. 3 members, shoulders tense, faces pale. They marched into her house. For 20 minutes, you could hear shouting through the walls, Karen screaming, board members trying to reason with her, accusations flying in every direction. Then the front door slammed open. The board members stormed out, looking shaken. One of them, Stephen, a usually quiet guy, walked straight toward me. "Daniel," he said, voice trembling, "we owe you an apology." I blinked. "For what?" "For everything," he said. "We believed her. She told us you were trying to sabotage the neighborhood. He told us you hated the HOA and were planning to sue us regardless. She lied about condemnations. She lied about surveys. She lied about what the judge said." I nodded slowly. "I figured some of that." "No," he said, swallowing hard. "You don't understand. She told us the DA had ordered an emergency property inspection and that we were legally obligated to enter your yard." My jaw clenched. "That is absolutely false." "We know," Stephen said. "We know now. We should have questioned her." "We didn't. That's on us." Behind him, a small group of neighbors had gathered. Some murmured apologies. Some kept their distance, clearly embarrassed they'd ever supported Karen. "Is she okay?" I asked cautiously. Stephen laughed, a short, humorless sound. "She's unraveling. She thinks everyone is plotting against her. She thinks you're conspiring with the sheriff department. She thinks the entire neighborhood hates her." I said nothing. He rubbed his temples. "The board is calling an emergency community meeting tonight. A vote of no confidence." "No confidence in Karen?" "In the entire HOA leadership," he said, "including herself. This has damaged everyone." I nodded. It was only a matter of time, but before the meeting could happen, something unexpected happened. The DA's office called. A calm, professional voice said, "Mr. Carter, we have reviewed the footage. We're pursuing charges of trespassing, attempted property damage, and fraudulent documentation." I exhaled, finally feeling like justice was moving. The DA continued, "And based on the aggression and the pattern of escalation, we are also considering a protective order." A silence settled over me. "Against me?" I asked. "No," the DA said gently. "Against Mrs. Fairchild." Something inside me relaxed for the first time in months. Not triumph, not revenge, just relief. The DA ended the call with, "We'll be in touch after the formal hearing. In the meantime, please avoid contact with her." As if I needed that reminder. The emergency HOA meeting took place that evening in the Willow Ridge Clubhouse, a place I'd never stepped foot in until that night. Dozens of people filled the room. Folding chairs scraped the hardwood floors. Tempers simmered. The air felt electric. Stephen stepped to the front, tapped the microphone, and cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. Tonight we addressed the misconduct of the HOA president and the board's failure to prevent it." The room erupted with murmurs. "We have all seen the footage," he continued. "We have all witnessed the lies, the trespassing, the illegal activities, and the damage this has caused to Willow Ridge." One woman shouted, "She embarrassed all of us." Another yelled, "She cost us thousands of dollars." Someone near the back added, "She tried to sabotage that man's property." Stephen nodded solemnly. "We propose a vote of no confidence in the current HOA president and complete removal from her position." Gasps, whispers, a few cheers. Then Stephen said something I didn't expect, "And we're also voting to dissolve the HOA." My eyes widened. The room exploded. People argued, shouted, clapped, or protested all at once. Some wanted Karen gone but wanted the HOA to survive. Others wanted everything dismantled. The chaos grew so loud the walls felt like they were shaking. Just as Stephen tried to calm the room, the clubhouse door burst open. Karen. She marched in with fire in her eyes like a queen storming into a rebellious kingdom. "How dare you?" she screamed. This is MYHOA. I built this community. I protected you. Boos, shouts, people telling her to leave. Karen spun toward me like a missile locking onto a target. This is your fault, she roared. You turned everyone against me. You ruined my life. A few people stepped between us. Stephen raised a hand. Karen, you're not allowed to be here. You can't stop me, she shrieked. You're all cowards. The restraining order meant she couldn't approach me, and she was dangerously close. The room erupted again as neighbors pushed her back. Deputy Harris stepped inside moments later, guiding her toward the exit. Ma'am, he said firmly, you need to leave now. She glared at the entire room, trembling. You'll regret this, she screamed. All of you will. I won't let you destroy what I built. But the room answered her with something she never expected. Silence. Cold, decisive silence. Karen realized, maybe for the first time, that she had lost everything. Deputy Harris escorted her out, and the community voted. Karen was removed, the HOA was dissolved, and the neighborhood breathed for the first time in years. But the story wasn't over, because the DA still had one more decision to make, and Karen still had one more meltdown left in her. The final verdict, Karen's collapse, the courtroom ending, and my emotional farewell to the fence that started it all, the hearing before the district attorney happened 2 weeks later. 2 long, peaceful weeks where I could step outside without looking over my shoulder. 2 weeks where neighbors waved at me, apologized, even thanked me. 2 weeks where the air felt lighter, like the neighborhood had finally unclenched its jaw. But I knew the final chapter was coming. And when the DA's summons arrived, stamped and official, it hit me all over again. This entire nightmare started because one woman couldn't accept that she didn't own what wasn't hers. I sat in the courthouse waiting room, documents in hand, just like the first time, but this time I wasn't nervous. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry. I was tired. Ms. Garner, my attorney, sat beside me. Today should be straightforward, she said. Just tell the truth. The rest is on them. I nodded. I just want this over. And then the door opened. Karen entered the hall escorted by a deputy. She looked different, exhausted, faded, smaller, like the weight of everything she'd done finally crushed her. She spotted me across the room and froze, her eyes filled with something I had never seen in her before, fear. Real human fear. For a moment, we just stared at each other, 2 people whose lives had collided in the most ridiculous, destructive way imaginable. And the deputy nudged her forward. The DA called us in. The hearing room was quieter than a courtroom, more intimate, more direct. The DA sat behind a desk stacked with folders. Mr. Carter, he said, nodding. Mrs. Fairchild. Karen didn't respond. Her lawyer, a different one from before, cleared his throat. My client wishes to enter a plea. The DA held up a hand. Not yet. We need statements. He looked at me. Mr. Carter, tell me in your own words what happened. So I did, not dramatically, not angrily, just honestly, how it started with a fake boundary line, how it escalated to trespassing, how the HOA sent false notices, how Karen pushed her board into illegal actions, how they tried to sabotage the fence, how the cameras caught everything. The DA listened, pen tapping lightly. When I finished, he nodded slowly. Thank you. Then he turned to Karen. Mrs. Fairchild, what do you have to say for yourself? Karen stared at her hands. Trying to protect the neighborhood, she said quietly. You trespassed, the DA said. I thought it was common land. You forged documentation. I was misguided. You attempted to destroy private property, she flinched. I didn't mean you went into this man's yard in the middle of the night with tools. Silence. The DA leaned back. Mrs. Fairchild, do you understand that these actions are criminal, not HOA disputes? Criminal. She swallowed hard. I didn't think it would go this far. That, he said bluntly, is the problem. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm and whispered something. Karen nodded weakly. My client, he said, is prepared to accept a plea agreement. The DA crossed his arms. We're listening. Her lawyer outlined it. Karen would plead guilty to misdemeanor trespassing. She would plead guilty to vandalism, attempted property damage. She would attend mandatory anger management. She would pay restitution for legal fees and damages. She would accept a 12-month no-contact order. She would be forbidden from serving on any HOA board for 10 years. I blinked. That was shockingly reasonable. The DA turned to me. Mr. Carter, do you accept this agreement? I thought about it, about everything she did, everything she cost me, everything she put the neighborhood through. And then I looked at her. She wasn't the swaggering clipboard queen anymore. She was a broken woman who finally realized she'd gone too far. Yes, I said softly, I accept. Karen let out a breath like she'd been holding it for weeks. The DA signed the file. The deputy cuffed her gently and walked her out to process the paperwork. As she passed me, Karen whispered something barely audible. I'm sorry. I didn't respond, but maybe, just maybe, she meant it. When the hearing ended, I walked home slowly. My fence stood exactly where it always had, sturdy, weathered, beautiful, a piece of my grandfather's legacy. A piece of my family history. Neighbors came out of their houses to greet me. Some clapped me on the back, some thanked me, some apologized, but one moment stood out, An elderly woman from Willow Ridge approached and said, "You defended what mattered. Most people wouldn't have fought this hard. Your grandfather would be proud." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Thank you," I said. I walked to the fence, put my hand on the old cedar post, and closed my eyes for a moment. This fence started a war. But it also ended one. And if there's one thing I want people to take away from this story, it's this: stand your ground, protect what's yours, and never ever let someone rewrite your history. And to everyone watching this video, would you have fought this long? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this roller coaster of justice, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more stories where karma finally catches up to the people who think they're above the rules. Because trust me, there are a lot more Karens out there, and together, we're going to expose every last one of them.